social media and technology are not evil. What's evil is us not teaching kids how to use technology in a way that will serve them. Social media can be used as a power of change. Hello, everyone. My name is Leena Ashar, and I'm so happy to be here supporting an initiative called Failing It Up by Sweet Magnolia. Um, I love the concept of failing. I don't think anyone has achieved anything great without having failure steps along the way. And it's something that I've incorporated in Kangaroo Kids when I had it, in Billabong High when I had it. And it's something that I felt very deeply when I was about to set off and embark upon my first entrepreneurial venture. Because you see, everyone, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher at heart. The only thing I knew I was great at was I was a great teacher. So I was teaching in a school in Australia. I was teaching senior school boys, and they said, "But Miss Leena, we don't like poetry." And I was like, by the time you finish with me, you'll love poetry. And so we started an exploration of poetry through popular songs, the lyrics of them, like, we don't need no education. And suddenly, the kids were buzzed in and they were turned on, and suddenly they were engaging with poetry in ways that they did not think that they could or would. So that was when I realized, hey, I think I've got a skill. I think I've got a skill in bringing high engaging learning experiences to kids. And I'll tell you why it was such a burning thing for me. I have two brothers. My older brother is extremely intelligent in terms of academic school score achievement, always the top in his class. In fact, when he finished HSC in Australia, he was amongst the 2 percentile of the high achievers across the country. So I had that one brother, high academic scores, and then I had a younger brother who I knew was highly intelligent but so disengaged from school because his brain told him, "Hey, school's not going to give you anything that you really need out there in the real world." And so he did a lot of self-learning, but none of it was through school. And his scores in school were completely, D's and E's, and he just couldn't make it in school. Luckily for us, we have a mom who didn't care about school. She didn't care about scores. And, it's one of the things I said that was one of the greatest things, that our parents didn't overparent us. They didn't have the time. They were too busy taking care of our survival needs, right? When we were in Australia. So we were just left to do what we thought was best for us. No one was peering over our report cards and telling me, "Leena, why did you fail in sports?" And I would have said, "I failed in sports because I've had multiple neck surgeries and I'm not going to really be good at sports. But hey, look at my English score, or look at the areas that I'm really interested in and see how well I do there." So I'd watch my younger brother, kind of fail at English, fail at math, but then he would become like a cricket commentator, sitting on the toilet seat with his cricket cards. He used to get, cricket cards in bubblegum packets, and he'd be sitting on the toilet seat and he would be becoming a sports commentator and using the highest levels of language to communicate and the highest levels of math to communicate to his imaginary audience about cricket. And that's when, like a penny dropped for me as a teacher, because I've always been a teacher. I've been a teacher since the age 4. I've always collected kids younger than me and been teaching them, reading to them even before I could read. So I think my soul and my heart is that of a teacher. So the burning question to me was, how could I teach Kamal, my younger brother, in a way that would excite him and engage him, to learn? And because learning's not an issue, obviously. It's just his brain always questions why he's learning, how he's learning, and what he's learning. And is that going to make him a millionaire in the real world? Because that was his goal. His goal, and it's part of our goals, don't forget, come from school. So if you fail in school, suddenly your need for external accomplishment to show the world that you're a success, even though you failed in school, suddenly becomes really big. And luckily for us, My parents just sowed us with the confidence. Yeah, we don't care about the scores, and we really believe in you, and you three are really going to make it. And so today, Kamal kind of heads our family business. He is a multimillionaire in his own right. He drives the fanciest cars, has the fanciest yachts, and he lives a life that he has always wanted to manifest. And a large part of that comes from him not getting the awards, the accolades, the certificates from school. So if you go down and you peel through those layers, we've been always taught in school that failing is no good. Failing at a test is no good. Failing an experiment is no good when, hey, every experiment that you do not succeed at is just telling you, okay, there's another way, there's another way, there's another way, learn, there's another way, there's another way, there's another way. And that's how my journey began. My journey began because I had a younger brother I really loved. He was my inspiration to say, how do I bring the joy of learning? Because, when you watch toddlers, they're learning all the time and they're excited and they're exploring and they're curious and they don't easily give up on something till we tell them that failing is bad. And then what do? If they can't do the puzzle, they leave it. Yeah. And another thing we've been doing it like as parents and as educators, when a child cracks the puzzle, and this is research-based studies, if the child cracks a puzzle at the first attempt, the next time we give him a puzzle, he's not going to, and we say, hey, great job. Hey, great job, Bhavna. You cracked the puzzle. Wow. I'm really, really proud of you. You're so smart. So great. And then we give him puzzles the next time. He will go and choose the easy puzzle, not the challenging one. Because we've just given him so much affirmation that, you've succeeding at your first attempt is really great. So when you want to then retry, you will make sure that you pick something that's not challenging. So you're not growing, you stay stuck. You stay stuck in the belief that success is the only way forward. And if you fail, you are going to be stuck. So let's just keep on being on this treadmill of finding success after success after success. So Kangaroo Kids was a slow start. We started with about, I think, 12 kids because every school wanted to get kids ready for entrance exams into other schools. And I knew that wasn't the right way. I knew that wasn't what was going to move kids forward. And I knew that meant that the windows of opportunity that kids have for development, right? Like you have your brain is plastic and you keep on developing, but there's certain windows open for maximum development, say for visual pathway. Or for auditory hearing, and as the pathways are getting laid down, and those are all in our childhood. So I had a really hard job trying to convince parents that we won't do what you think you want, but we will do what you need. And not what you need, what your child needs. So we won't actually do what you want, we'll do what your child needs. Because, there's this where the one type of enterprise where the customer and the consumer are two different beasts. The customer wants the awards, accolades, the hard to get into schools, the name, the status. Oh, my kid goes to this school, and so the customer wants something, but the consumer wants engagement, wants fun learning, wants to develop a growth mindset. But these two are at loggerheads with each other, and there's something, really interesting that I read today. And you know, it's that I was reading that when Steve Jobs took his original team on their first retreat, one member asked whether they should do some market research to see what customers wanted. And Steve Jobs said, no, because customers don't know what they want until we've shown them. And he used Henry Ford's line, if I'd asked customers what they would have wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. Now, this is what we've been doing in education and learning for so long, right? That we're trying to take an existing system whose actual use by date has expired, and then we're trying to tweak that system to make it better. But learning and education has to be disrupted. We disrupted it in 1993 with Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High, but that's old school now. I'm disrupting it again now in 2023 because if you think about it, the world's completely shifted. In 1993, when I began the preschool, we had no cell phones. We had internet, no real internet. It came a few years later. And so much has changed in the world outside, but why has so little changed in our classrooms? Why are we okay giving our children an archaic way of learning that will have zero relevance in their lives? And that's what, my quest is all about, to build something that parents then will see, oh wow, the world has changed outside. Our kids do have to be digital natives. So when I started Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High, the journey was really slow for both. Kangaroo Kids, as I said, 13 kids, because parents said, I want to get my kid into this school. This is the examination system. And it was like a preparation. It was so sad that preschools were preparatory tuition places for entrance into schools. I'm talking about 1993. And so I had to, shift that and start showing parents what the kids really need. I had to go to schools. I remember going to schools and saying, hey, testing for intellectual eliteness and then giving out good grades and saying, hey, we got the topper in the school is nothing great, because you've just taken a kid who'd do really well anywhere and then you've said, hey, he's done well. So what have you done as a school? What have you actually accomplished? You should take in all kids, right? And then show us what you can do to actually bring out their potential. But okay, if you do have to test, don't use testing like who's the father of the nation, because kids at the age of 2 and 3, it's too abstract a concept. Nation is too abstract a concept, right? I'll give you testing tools. So like I'd give them logical testing tools that circle, circle, square, circle, circle. Then what does the kid put in? Right? You're testing some form of actual IQ, which you shouldn't be doing. But if you have to do it, it's a better way to do it than the way you were doing it. Then I remember starting Billabong High, and the first guy who set up the primary school, I said, we will have a slow start. Like we'll probably just start with 15 kids, because it's only when in India, not only in India, all around the world, we have this herd mentality. Which school can we not get into? Which school has the longest wait list? That's the school we all want. Absolute herd mentality, right? So I said it'll be like that because we've got open entry. We're not interviewing. We're not testing the kids. We're taking all kids in. We're doing the right thing. But that will take a while to take on. So obviously, we know that then Billabong grew into many, many schools. Many people came and said, like, we want this way of learning for kids. We know it's nicer and it's kinder, and it actually gives us great kids at the end. Because, one is the drill and you posting great scores, but that's not actually what life is going to test you on. Life is going to test you on how resilient are you. When it comes to it, are you empathetic? When I throw a new challenge at you, do you have a growth mindset, or do you shirk from the challenge? That's what life's going to test you on. But how do you develop those skills if all you're doing is ramming the academic stuff down kids' throats? So there are a few great revolutionary people who said, we actually understand what you're trying to do here and we want to support this cause. And they became Billabong High schools. The thing is that then I tried to shift Billabong to be more relevant. And we had great success with Billabong, by the way. We have examples of kids who published books. I just came back from Billabong Bhopal. I was chief guest there for the sports day. And a girl at the age of 5 has published a stunning book, a piece of fiction. She's illustrated and she's actually got it published, right? Youngest publisher, Guinness Book of World Records. I've got examples of kids who are autistic, who became India's topper in art and design, one child. So we've got lots of those stories. But what's really important about the stories is it teaches you that you can't be everything. And we try that kids should become A graders in all subjects. You can't have everything you want, but you can have anything you want. So if you focus on a skill that you really love, that's a high engagement and interest to you, you can crack that. whether it's in art and design, whether it's in acting. So we've got kids who failed at school, but they were great on the stage. And then we told their moms, you have to take them to acting school. And then they started movies and stuff and did really well. So it started showing me that we have to personalize learning more. We have to shift from this factory model of schooling where we're teaching everything the same thing at the same time to a more personalized way of learning. And I started trying to shift this at Billabong High. And I started getting a lot of resistance because people don't like change. Teachers don't like change. Principals don't like change. Um, Parents don't like change. Kids love change, but they're at the bottom of the pecking order, right? All the decisions are taken up here for this child who actually should be having some decision-making power. So when I try to do it, I try to bring in like 2.0 curriculum in both. Got a lot of resistance. Why are you making our kids do so much research? Because the future is all going to be about being able to access the content you need and then synthesizing it to do something new. So I got a lot of resistance. At the same time, so I listen to messages from the universe. I'm like, I believe in what Einstein and Tesla says, that there's vibrational energy out there. If you're open to it, you will receive your direction. You will receive the wisdom, collective wisdom of all the consciousness that sits. So I got resistance here. At the same time, my younger brother, who was supporting me, his wife got pregnant with the second kid, so it became more and more difficult for him to fly in and fly out. And I attended a conference by Peter Tremendous called Abundance, Singularity University. And I started thinking about what he calls, what is your transformational purpose? And, and your transformational purpose changes, right? So when I was a teacher in a classroom in Australia, my purpose was to be the best teacher in that school. Like my kids should be so engaged with learning that even when they go to another classroom, they're still buzzed, and they'll still be buzzed even if everything else that comes to them is not ideal, because they'll be buzzed because they've learned that learning can be so engaging. And then when I came here, I wanted to shift the way people saw learning and education. So that was my next transformational purpose. Then I wanted to become the most loved brand because then, it would attract people to actually expand that notion of thinking. And, today, because I shift the story in my head, Vibgyo High is a offshoot of Billabong. So it was a Billabong franchisee that when Rogan has expanded lots of schools. At the end of the day, my vision and my message reaches those kids as well, right? The business may not reach me, but the vision and thinking and all of that still reaches. CP Goenka was an old Billabong. Wales International in Chennai was an old Billabong. So even when people, when it first happens and people do this and we start thinking people are mean, people are, and then I read somewhere that life happens for you and not to you, and if you can make that shift in your head, everything will change. And I said, hey, I came here to shift the way people perceive education. I didn't come here to make $1 billion. So if they're making billions of dollars off my purpose, I'm still meeting my purpose, right? So when I started shifting that, things happen. And then I realized my transformational purpose is not actually just to set up schools anymore. I have to redo everyone's thinking about what learning and education can be like, number one. And number two is if my personal life quest is when I die, that this world is happier, more peaceful, more collaborative, um, then I can't do it through hundreds of kids or even thousands of kids. I have to reach millions of kids to change human collective consciousness. It has to be at big scale. And this comes to me after 9/11. After 9/11, when there was an outpouring of empathy from all across the world, the Earth's actual resonance shifted. Its magnetic resonance shifted. And so we suddenly realized that, what we feel when we walk into a temple or a mosque, or a church. And you walk in and you feel that energy, right? That you feel hope, you feel love, you feel an uplifting of spirit. Because everyone in there who came in there, it's like a magnifying glass. Everyone focused on bringing their best spiritual self to that room. And you are feeding off that energy that has formed. In the same sense, if we can reach millions of kids who suddenly realize, hey, collaboration is better than competition. And, you know, we can do win-wins in the world where everyone wins and no one has to go hungry and no one has to live in poverty and no one has to live on the street. We can create situations where we all win as humanity. If we can go from kids believing that, hey, and not believing, because the brain science tells us that when you create, your brain is happier than when you consume. When you give, your brain is happier than when you take. But we haven't, that's not how we've learned this. We've learned from the marketing world, competition is great. You have to be the number one. Consuming is great, right? When you do this, you'll be able to buy your boat and your car and your yacht, whatever else you want. And, you know, all of this is not true. The marketing world has fooled us into believing this, but it's not true. Our brains get overwhelmed when we give them too much choice, which is why Netflix and everyone staggers to keep our attention. I mean, it was way easier when we went to the video store and we borrowed 2 cassettes and we were happy. We watched them, right? And one or two of them may not have been exactly enjoyable, but we still watched them. Today we're stuck in too much of choice. So I decided it was time to let go of Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High. And it was time to start something new. If I really want scale and impact, I've got to go digital. And so Dreamtime Learning is what we're doing. We're a virtual school. We're building micro schools, which is, schools that only will house 100, 120 kids, where we can actually personalize the learning for each child. We're doing it in a way where we use the science of learning. So where kids were going to school for 7 to 8 hours a day, then the school bus, you add another 2 hours. And then homework, you add another 1, 2 hours. And then you have to go to ballet class or this class or that class or tuitions. And kids are suddenly in all this overwhelm. And kids are not turning to technology for any other reason than we turn to alcohol. They are wanting it as a distraction from their overwhelmed lives. It's why anxiety and depression is on the rise, because we're overwhelming kids with just too much. Information is doubling and tripling and quadrupling, and we're trying to cram all of that now into our schools. And so Dreamtime Learning is a place where a child comes for 3 hours, 20 minutes and completes all his core academics, but also learns about all these great things, right? So if the child is doing Harry Potter in literature, he's also learning about, what values do characters have, and how our values actually shift how we perform, how we behave, how we think, what we do. So, from the example I gave you before, if my highest value was financial abundance, then I would have seen things very differently to if my highest values are contribution and creation and creating. So everything, then you just think back to your values and say, will this decision, does it match my values? And we don't teach these things to kids. We hardly think about them. So for anybody watching this, I'd love for you, if you're excited about it, to say, hey, I want a workshop around this, and I'd show you like how just the selection of your values and the ordering of them can completely shift how you transform your life, because you won't transact anymore. It'll be a transformative purpose, because you suddenly think, these are my values, and what do I have to do to actually meet my values? And this is what makes me happy. So That's dreamtime learning. So if I were to say some of the greatest things I've learned along the way, from different people, and in different ways, I think one thing that Anthony Robbins said when I went to a workshop is that when you're faced with anything you don't like, you've only actually got three options to choose from. You either suffer, or you change your life condition, or you change the story, or you change what it means to you. And that was really powerful for me, right? It says, like, if you're in a bad marriage, what are my three choices? I can either sit there and suffer and complain about it all the time, or I can separate, right? Or I can change my life story. What does it actually mean to me? And if you shift that, then somehow you shift and everything. So that was a really uh, that was a revelation for me. So anything that happens in my life that I don't enjoy, I know I've got these three options, and I quickly go through them and I choose. And decision making is one of the greatest things, right? That you choose and you start moving on. I think something else powerful that I've learned along the way is that you don't see things as they are, you see them as you are, right? And that by the shift in perception, um, a lot can change. And there's a book we teach in grade 7 called The Noticer. And there's the mentor and the mentee. And the mentor has got fish and chips for both of them, and they're sitting on the sand at the beach. And he said, you need a little perspective. So he asks, what do you mean by that? He said, what are you eating? He said, I'm eating fish and chips. He said, that's the difference. I'm dining on surf and turf with an ocean view. So your lens of how you see things actually shifts what you see. And quantum physics is showing that, like, the observer changes what is being observed. I think another thing that I have learned that's very powerful is we may think life happens to us, but it actually happens for us. It happens for our highest development, our highest uh, good. And when you say highest development and highest good, it doesn't mean that when something happens to you, you enjoy it. Right? It may not be enjoyable in that moment, but it will take you to where you're supposed to go in terms of your own self-development. So I think that was three things. I think if I had to add a fourth, it would be invest in yourself, invest in your self-development, because that's the greatest gift you can give yourself and you can give the world. And if I would say the fifth thing that I've learned along the way is, life is not supposed to be problem-free. It's supposed to be filled with problems, and it's how you address them, how you solve them, how you deal with them, that makes all the difference. Failure conceptually has been shunned by society. It's been shunned by our education system. And it needs more prominence, more space. So I'm very, very happy that, there is an initiative called Failing It Up. You have to popularize something. You have to make it trendy to fail for it to actually gain momentum. And that's sad, but it's true. Um, you know, an interesting thing that was said was you get successful people on the show and they understand that failure is a part of leading a successful life. Well, anyone who's not learned that failure is to be embraced, that failure is necessary, that you don't actually fail, you just learn one way of not doing something. Um, and it teaches you so much. And it helps you develop a growth mindset, which means you will not shy away from challenging tasks. You will not shy away from doing challenging things that the world needs. Um, the interesting thing is you will always have successful people telling you that failure was a path to their success. Because if there's any one as a child or as an adult who doesn't want to fail, chances are they will not attempt anything. And this is something I learned, when I wanted to start the first Kangaroo Kids. I went to my dad and I said, give me 30 lakhs and I'll build the most transformational preschool that India's ever seen. This is in 1993. And I took 30 lakhs from my dad. And in those days, 30 lakhs was a lot for my family to put aside. And I know I spent sleepless nights before the launch of the school being afraid to fail. And then one day I woke up and I said, you know, I will have mistakes along the way. I will have fail along the way. But if I'm so stuck on seeing the trees, which is, the things that are going to block you, I won't see the expanse of where it is I need to go and what I need to do. So the fact is that anyone who is successful already knows that. And that's why you're bringing them, onto failing it up, onto your show. Because the sad fact is that anyone who is successful knows that, and anybody who's not doesn't know that. You know, I'm going to give you an example of something I learned which told me everything. My son is my son. So I've always pushed him to be creative, to be independent, to take risks. Some people are aghast that he flew to Australia the first time by himself when he was 4 years old because he was completely ready and he wanted to do it and he was confident. And people say, how could you, like, thinking like I'm a really bad mom? I'm saying, no, I'm a good mom. The more we overprotect our kids, the more we, want to clear all problems for them, the worse it is for them in terms of their own growth. So this child is in school and he's in grade 2 and he's given words to make sentences from, right? Boy, book, pen. And his first draft of these sentences is, the very adventurous boy climbed the huge mountain. And he spelt it phonetically, right? Adventurous, obviously not knowing the spelling. And at grade 2, you're not supposed to have mastered the spelling of the word adventurous. And he got 2 out of 10 for all these really exotic sentences where he'd use his imagination and all of that. The next time he was given the paper to redo, he wrote, this is a boy, that is a pen. And he got 10 out of 10. And that was such a revelation for me. I said, hey, you know what? We're completely dumbing kids down. We're getting them to feel that getting red marks through your work is horrible. Doesn't matter if you've extended yourself and if you've expanded, and actually in grade 2, you're not supposed to know how to spell those words. So when I built my schools, I said, you correct for different things. If you're correcting for creativity and imagination, you don't check spelling. We correct spelling, but we don't assess for the spelling. Because then we're telling kids, don't be creative. Don't be imaginative. Don't stretch yourself. Do not fail. When, hey, we should be saying, embrace it. Love it. It's all part of the journey. My brothers and redefine what failure means. I think the pivotal moment in my life was in 2006 when my first franchise breakaway happened. And, um, copy pasting of my curriculum and stuff like that. And suddenly I thought, oh, and the media was portraying me incorrectly. And, for me, someone like me, integrity and everything means so much. And so I'd gone like this. I felt like a failure. I was sitting in this cocoon. I couldn't get out of my bed because I didn't want to open the newspaper and say, what was it going to say about Leena Ashar today? And in that cocoon, in that anxiousness, in that feeling of depression, is when I said, life happens for me, not to me. And if I stay in this bed, in this depression, nothing is going to change. If I change how I think about this, it's not a failure. I've just learned how to tighten my franchise agreements. I've just learned that people are capable of doing this. I've just learned that I have to keep shifting and being more and more relevant in my learning instructional design so that people who take your stuff away are now still old school, right? You're building and developing new school all the time. And if life happens for me, because till then, remember, I was only working as a consultant for schools. I was only franchising my curriculum and my content. It's the first time I went and took the risk of setting up my own school. Billabong High Malad was a school that I mortgaged a property or everything that I had. I risked everything I had to put that school up, to say to myself that, like, Leena, you think you can't run schools, but you can learn anything. If you have the desire, if someone's pushed your back to the wall, you're capable of getting through the wall. You're capable of coming across the other side. You're capable of learning anything you want to learn. It's just in your head. You may not enjoy it as much as creating instructional design, but you can do it. So I went in. I understood how to take a loan. I worked with a contractor and an architect, and we put up the school, and we started all over again. And today, Billabong High Malad was the number one reason I got the valuation I did when I sold the company. So if I have to shift, I said, actually, what that guy gave me was a gift. I thought he gave me something that was cruel, but actually, what he gave me was a gift. And that's when I say that the minute you shift, you reframe the story in your head, you can come out of your cocoon, you can get out of bed, and you can charge and take action, decisions, choices, thinking that will move you forward and not keep you stuck. Dreamtime is my big, hairy, audacious goal. It's here to completely shift the way everyone sees education all over again. It's here to say, that there's 4 types of people that will be valued going forward, and we can help you be one of those 4. With AI and technology exponentially shifting at the speeds it is, the 4 types of people that will be valued in the world going forward is: 1, you have a personal monopoly, which means you have a personal copyright of a subset of skills that makes it very difficult to replace you. So people can cut, copy, paste my curriculum, but they don't have the innovative mindset, because I've done hundreds of thousands of hours of reading in the areas of brain science, in the areas of behavioral science, in the areas of learning engagement. All those many ways in which I've become an expert create my personal monopoly, which cannot be easily replaced. So one is to be that kind of person. To be that kind of person, I've got to free up your time in school, right? I can't have you going to school for 8 hours a day, traveling for 2 hours, then doing homework, then running here and there. If I give you 2/3 of your day back, you can now become this person, because you can now start thinking about what really interests me and how does those subsets of interest create something of who I can be that the world needs. The second type of person that would be valued going forward is somebody with a highly specialized skill, like, say, Ronaldo, who earns millions every week, right? Because he's honed that specialized skill. But if he was in school today and he had to go to school for 8 hours a day and do homework and be on the school bus, he wouldn't have the time to develop and be Ronaldo. But if I can if I can give him back 2/3 of his time, he can go out and learn to be Ronaldo. The third type of person that will be valued going forward is somebody with high emotional intelligence, with the number one quality being empathy. So tomorrow, in the world of tomorrow, You won't have a doctor giving you a diagnosis. You'll put your symptoms into an AI machine, and that AI machine will not only, um, you know, be able to diagnose what you have from the experiences of one doctor, but from the experiences of the doctors across the world. So your diagnosis will be 97% a higher prediction, yes, than a doctor can give you. But you will need a doctor to hold your hand and say, hey, you know what? This is what you have. And yesterday I was with a highly empathetic doctor who told me, hey, you know, you got fibromyalgia, but it's a good thing. We've got a diagnosis, and I'm going to hold your hand, and in 3 months, you're going to be fine. Okay? So you'll need very high EQ to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, because artificial intelligence will draft the contracts, will give you a diagnosis, will do all those things that we're expecting otherwise. And the fourth type of person that will be valued going forward is a very highly innovative entrepreneurial mindset, who kind of looks at the world in ways that are not status quo thoughts, not cognitive bias thoughts, but looks at something and says, hey, why does it have to be this way? If I do this, this, and this, can this be different? And these are people we'll need to solve the world's problems that we've already created. So these are the four types of people that be valued. If we give kids back 2/3 of their time and take away the overwhelm, which is freezing their brains, we can help them be one of these four types of people. And this Dreamtime learning system can be used. Kids can come into a virtual school. We can actually give the system to an existing school so that they can become a personalized learning school as well. And in all ways, like you can finish your learning in 2 days instead of 5 days. So now you can come to school on Monday and Wednesday and specialize the other days. Or you can come to school on Saturday, Sunday, and you specialize the other days. And a school can actually utilize its real estate in much more powerful ways than just having kids there from 8 in the morning to whatever time in the evening, right? And your school then sits empty, mostly on weekends. So schools can use this, powered by Dreamtime Learning, as a replacement to textbooks. And so one of the other problems I'm looking at is we chop down so many trees to educate kids. Our world cannot sustain that. If we go digital, when we go digital, we save that. The funniest thing I see is when I walk into a school and I see these posters, save trees. I'm going, we're teaching kids with such hypocrisy that you have to cut down a tree to make that poster. What messages are we sending in kids' brains? So Dreamtime Learning will allow schools to become personalized learning schools. It'll allow kids to come virtually into schools, so learning from anywhere in the world, everywhere in the world. One of the things that I used to feel terrible about, because I traveled Australia, I lived in Australia, England, Africa, and India. And I knew how much that taught me, right? Just living in those places and the amount of travel we had to do. I would feel terrible when principals tell kids, no, you can't travel. Hey, let them travel. They're going to learn more from the travel experience than those 5 days in school. There's so much more value out there. Their minds open up, their imagination opens up. Let them do it. And this way, because you can take your learning with you, do it for 2 hours every day, and then you've got the rest of the day free to be traveling wherever you are. So there's all these problems that we want to solve for kids, for the planet, for teachers, for parents, and that's Dreamtime Learning. So when parents hesitate to use technology, some of the things that I think about is, where alcohol is banned, you have the highest alcohol consumption, right? We are very happy to use technology to buy food, to entertain ourselves, to heat up our meals, to clean up our homes. We're very happy as adults to use technology to ease our lives. And yet when it comes to kids using technology, and quite hypocritically, because the same parent who says do not use technology will be sitting with friends at a dinner table and the kids will be on the device. So the parents are using it to kind of babysit kids, and that's okay. But kids actually using it I'm always of the opinion that we embrace the world where it is. So Facebook can be used evilly or it can be used for good, depending on how you look at it, right? So if Facebook exists, isn't it better we teach kids the brain science of Facebook? So what is dopamine? And how do you get dopamine hits when you get those likes? So if we can teach kids that, when they're on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social medias, and each time they get a like or a comment, how dopamine hits their brain, right? If we can show them that it's narcissists who keep taking selfies and posting them, but social media can be used as a power of change. It can be used as a voice for good. We teach kids, like, if Gandhiji had social media at his beck and call when he was doing the Salt March, how would he have done the Salt March? Like, create the posts for Gandhi Salt March. And how could he have spread the message so much quicker than what he did? That there's a new power thanks to social media where you can get funding. You don't have to be a rich man's kid to start an entrepreneurial venture if you have a great idea. You can get crowdfunding. You can do this. You can do that. Where is all this technology taking us? You can use technology to meditate, to exercise, to learn, to create. You can also use technology to post selfies, to compare yourself to others, to consume entertainment. So, social media and technology are not evil. What's evil is us not teaching kids how to use technology in a way that will serve them. So, in our learning process, the reason why we're able to take learning and bring it down to that kind of science is our kids are highly focused when they're online. It's not passive learning. They may watch 2 minutes of a video, then they actively engage with the information. Then they either by themselves or in breakout rooms with other kids go and collaborate to synthesize, to create something new because of the step one and step two. So step one might be, I'll just take the Gandhiji example again. Step one might be a video of Gandhiji's salt march. Step two will be an interaction, right, of them thinking about ways in which the march happened, how many people it reached. So looking at the statistics, blah, blah. And then asking them, are there more powerful ways of reaching a wider audience? And now go into your breakout rooms and create those powerful ways of reaching a wider audience. And how many people could Gandhiji have actually had on the march? And how does it change? How does technology change old power into new power? Because once upon a time, access, information was in the hands of a few. Today, we are still at that sad stage where 10% of the world owns 90% of its wealth. We've got to make that balance shift. Technology will help us do that. When I was a kid coming from Australia at the age of 16, and if I went to a rural area, the girls would stare at me, right? Because I was dressed like Australian and all of that, and they were dressed rural. And well, today, if I go to a rural area, girls are dressed way more trendier than I am. How has that happened? They've got access. They've got access to knowing how to dress. That's different to the way that they have. Access opens up a world of possibilities for our children. We've got to start thinking about all the world's children as our own. That karmically, every human being on this planet is interconnected. And if we do that, we will have a more equitable world, a more fair world, a happier world, a more connected world. Because no one realizes, but these millions that we collect, we can't take it with us. And if we leave it for our kids, we've suddenly left our kids with a handicap. We've not left them with the muscle that they need to be the best version of themselves. I watched my parents struggle financially. I struggled financially. That was a gift. It was a gift for me to always want to be the best version of myself. And that's the only thing I've taught my son. That son, you got wealth. You've been born to wealth. You haven't known the struggle of money. But understand something. Your mind, your heart, your soul was born to create, to learn, to grow, to contribute. And if you do not allow your brain, your heart, your soul to know that and to do that every single day, you may end up rich, but you'll end up miserable. Every one of us was born to grow, to contribute, and to be the best versions of ourselves possible. And that's where happiness is. That's where joy is. That's where fulfillment is. Hey, I'm Leena Ashar, and I was so thrilled to be invited to Failing It Up, concept I deeply believe in. If you liked anything I've said, if you believe in anything I've said, if you believe that there is a collective consciousness that we can all raise together, that we can all play a part in making this world kinder, gentler, more loving, more peaceful, more connected, then please do like, subscribe, um, and join us in this mission of teaching kids that failing it up is just one step to successfuling it up.